What is a weird childhood memory you have that you don't know whether it's true or not? My brother managed to get his head stuck in the scrollwork of an ironwood banister at a hotel, and in the ensuing panic I wandered off to this wonderful place where there was a table full of cookies and candy. As I'm eating the cookies and the candy and whatever I can find, some really angry adult yells at me, picks me up and carries me out of this amazing room filled with sweets. I was about 3 or 4 years old. I think I crashed a wedding or a bar mitzvah's dessert table while my brother was being extracted from the banister. It was amazing. My parents claim it never happened. I saw a kid put his head inside a bin and get stuck once. Took the fire brigade half an hour to get him free, which they managed to do without cutting the bin up. As they were packing up to leave, the kid ran up to the bin and got his head stuck in it again. That when I was about 10 I was at my auntie and uncle's house in Sydney for Christmas and my cousin who's a hairdresser perfectly straightened my crazily curly long hair, which takes over an hour. One of my presents that morning was new pajamas and I put them on and went to walk out into the garden to show my mum my new pajamas and tripped and fell into their pool, soaking my new PJs and ruining my perfectly straight hair. To my cousin's dismay, I literally have such a vivid memory of it happening, but I brought it up to my mum once and she doesn't remember it, so I have always questioned myself. I clearly remember my mom telling me as a kid that if I put vegetables in the freezer, they turn into ice cream. I told her now years later how it was a funny joke, but she swears she has never said it. I hate when you remember something so clearly and the other person says they never said it. I stepped on a roofing nail and got a huge hole in my foot that I had to soak nightly for a month. My mom said it didn't happen, but my dad and sister say it did happen. Maybe it was your dad's and sister's fault, and your dad said don't tell mom. Just kidding. P. One time when I was about 8, we were at a relative's cabin and I went to go tell my dad it was lunchtime when I saw him standing stock still in the river. I called out to him and he just slowly motioned for me to be quiet. I watched him standing there, looking into the water for maybe a full minute before he lurched into the water and snatched up an enormous carp. I just watched my dad hold onto this giant, glistening carp for several seconds before he threw it back into the river and waded out of the river like nothing happened. He didn't say anything about it when we got back to the cabin and we've never talked about it. I could ask him about it now, I suppose, but there's something magical or surreal about the fact that it was never spoken of again. I wonder if I would be able to snatch a fish out of the water in an apocalypse. Snatch. Yup, your dad probably. There was an old couple who lived on the other side of my backyard fence. They had grandkids who were a bit older than me or younger than me, so we weren't friends. When I was 3 or 4 years old I met a kid who was visiting them across the fence. He told me they were his grandparents and I would talk with him through the fence. It was awkward and we would mostly just sit there and play with our own toys in silence or just look at each other for hours. A lot like the 2 kids and the boy in the striped pajamas. His name was Brian and every time I played with him his grandfather would give me a weird look. We moved cities shortly after and years later I brought it up with my brothers and my mom and they don't remember the neighbors having a grandkid my age. They remember the older kids and the younger ones but not anyone my age. They don't remember me ever playing with anyone out there. They don't remember anything about it at all. It still freaks me out to think about that. Maybe that's why the granddad looked at you weird. He probably just saw you playing by yourself talking to someone who wasn't there, an imaginary friend. I remember when I was a child there was this fountain in my city that had some kind of spikes at the bottom, some elements of a construction. And I vaguely remember that once my mom and I were passing by the fountain and there was no water in it, but there was a man lying there in a puddle of blood, pierced by the spikes as if he had fallen on them accidentally. And my mom was like, oh, let's go. Now, I asked her about it when I got older and she said what? This never happened I guess. She wouldn't lie about it and it's not something she'd just forget. So maybe it never happened. Indeed. Not sure why I remember this though. You should try checking the news from around when it would have happened. Something like that would 100% have been covered. There was a thunderstorm one afternoon. I very vividly remember 2 lightning bolts traveling horizontally and colliding, forming this spherical cage of lightning in the sky. For just a moment, I can see it so clearly in my mind. The color of the sky, the room I was in, the way the air felt, the shapes the lightning took. but I haven't found any example of a similar phenomenon anywhere online, so if someone who knows more about lightning would chime in, that'd be great. Not sure how old I was exactly, but I know I was younger than 8. You saw Goku and Vegeta fighting. One time when I was about 5, I was in the backseat of my mom's car and saw a huge black rain cloud right over us. It looked extraterrestrial, or like it could be in a movie about the apocalypse or something. It was probably just a normal cloud, but the image of it stuck with me and I think about it every so often. I've seen clouds like that a couple of times before, usually when someone a few miles away has just had or is about to have a humdinger of a thunderstorm. Bright sunny day, blue sky, a few fluffy white clouds on the horizon, and right smack in the middle is a dense sinister black brick of a cloud looking for all the world like it's about to unleash literal heck. Freakin' emo clouds. I remember when my mom was having a baby, my grandma took care of me when I was sick at the same time. My stomach hurt and I was throwing up when she grabbed a bottle of Pepto-Bismol and made me drink about 60% of the bottle. I then threw up pink and that scarred me so much that I throw up every time I drink Pepto-Bismol. I threw up Pepto once when I was 8ish. I'm 30 and haven't had it since. Just the sight of it disgusts me. I vividly remember going to see my dad in hospital after he had been in a car accident. I remember the bruises on his chest from the seatbelt and his old school hairstyle. He had a hip to ankle cast as he had broken his leg in 3 places, and I remember that leg wasn't covered by the blanket so I could see the cast. My mum was actually pregnant with me when this happened, so there's no chance I could remember it. However, I'm convinced my mum has got her dates wrong. My most vivid childhood memory is not real. I remember leaving the hospital after I broke my arm in a wheelchair, and there was the most beautiful bright sunset I had ever seen. There was also a few rainbows and flocks of bats flying in the sky. According to my mom, it was early afternoon and raining. I can still see it so clearly though. I guess she wasn't surfing on the morphine. I woke up from a bad dream and went to go sleep with my parents. On the way to their bedroom I had to pass the front door, which had a big window next to it. 2 guys were trying to break in, and when they saw me, they knocked on the window to get my attention and motioned for me to unlock the door. My mom said it was a dream, but to this day, the image of those 2 guys at our front window is as real as any childhood memory I have. This happened over 40 years ago. I remember vomiting all over the backseat of the family car and spending the remainder of the road trip to my uncle's house sitting in the car in just my underwear. Yeah, I remember too being at my uncle's house in just my underwear. I have a vague memory of me and my twin brother being visited by the bicho papao, a creature that visits naughty children in Brazilian and Portuguese culture, when we were very young. Pretty sure a creature like that is not exclusive from my culture. Anyways, the freaky part is that my brother also have the same memory. To this day we don't know if it was real or not, but if it was, maybe it was somebody trying to play a prank on us, since we were naughty children indeed. This feels strange to think about to this day because I still believe it to be true, but nobody else in my family does. I had only just started walking and I remember throwing a teddy bear back and forth with my grandmother, who was pretty ill at the time. I could never catch it because I lacked the hand-eye coordination, so she would throw it a little short, and I kept throwing short as well because I wasn't very strong. I had just started practicing walking, but couldn't fully walk yet. Whenever I would throw the bear away, of course, I would get up to try and walk to it but kept stumbling, so she would always go and get it for us. Now, my grandmother died when I was about 1 year and a few months old, so everyone in my family swore this never happened. They said even if I somehow remember something from that early of an age, there is no way it happened because by the time I started to walk, my grandma was too ill to walk herself. Creepy part about all this, I remember my aunt taking a picture of us on our really old film camera while we were playing with that bear but could never physically find the photograph. I hadn't went back to my home country for a few years. I went back to visit when I was 11 and we were going through old albums and it was there. My aunt swears she never took that picture. Everyone in my family I've asked swears they never took it either. The picture is me and my grandmother sitting across the living room floor with that same teddy bear, both of us looking at the camera with holding the bear out as if she was about to throw it. But my aunt, or whoever took the photo, caught us by surprise, so we both looked at the camera. It wasn't on my mind as we were leaving, so I didn't think to take it back. I wish I did. I was maybe 1 year old in the photo and did not look like I could walk at all, so I'm not surprised my grandma didn't even let me try. The memory is so clear in my head, and to have everyone tell me it didn't happen is just off-putting. Grandma too sick to walk around for other people's balls equals grandma too sick to get the teddy bear for the baby. Grandmas are awesome. I'm telling ya, this is true. I was at home with some cousins over for lunch. We were sitting in our living room, which was in sight of the front door and front gate. Beyond that, I saw a newlywed couple go up to our gate, the man opening it for his bride very nicely, and walked up and into our house. My aunt went up and explained that this is our house, and they walked off. No one who was there has any memory of this event, but it is very vivid in my mind. My very first vivid memory is false. I got a shape sorter for Christmas. When my parents left the living room, my older brother walked over, picked up a block, and threw it in the fire. I was reminding my mum about this in my early 20s and she laughed. We didn't have an open fire, and my older brother couldn't walk yet. I still think he did it. I was a very young boy when the incident happened. I was at a family friend's house, playing with their 2 kids in a paddling pool on a summer's day. I was young enough that I didn't have swimming shorts, but going naked wasn't a big deal, so probably anywhere up to perhaps 5-6 years old. I had a stonking hard on the whole time. I remember the mum coming out asking if I wanted to perhaps borrow some shorts, and I just told her that I was fine without. So I'm there splish splashing around in all my wooden glory for probably like an hour. I have zero interest in verifying with the mother whether that happened or not. When I first started experiencing stuff like that as a young kid, I thought it was this really novel thing and would tell people about it. My parents, my friends, relatives, church people. I'd just be like, you'll never believe what my penis did the other day. I'm not sure how many people I did this to, but I'm not ever gonna take a poll. I have a memory from when I was young enough to be in a crib. I remember my mom putting me down and I was scared and teething. So I grinned my teeth on my wood crib, and I remember that feeling still. The wood was so soft it felt amazing. Lol. After that I remember laying down on my stomach and falling asleep right away. I had to have been about 1, so I feel like how could I remember something from that long ago. But on the other hand, my mom said me and one of my brothers used to bite the crib a lot. Oh man, this reminds me. When I was a kid I would stand in front of our aquarium and stare at the fish, and the top edge of the table it was on lined up exactly with my teeth, so I would stand there and bite the wood while I zoned out watching the fish. I can still remember the taste. I remember when I was 6-8 having a picture of a yellow duck on a red background that I've personally drawn. I also remember having to feed it by drawing yellow dots near the duck, and I've done it multiple times too. Strange thing is that every morning yellow dots disappeared as if the duck ate them. My parents didn't know that I fed the duck, so they couldn't draw over the dots. And I remember seeing same picture without the dots much later, in my teens. Still don't know if that was my imagination or some strange reaction with the paint. One time when I was about 7, I was sleeping over at one of my parents' friends' house. As I was lying in bed trying to sleep, I started to hear footsteps from the floor above. It was just me and this woman in the house, and I knew she was asleep. Then I swear to God, I saw footprints forming on the ceiling, slowly walking across it. I'm absolutely convinced that this happened, but when I ask my parents about it they have no idea what I'm talking about and don't even remember this friend. I refuse to believe that it was a dream. That's creepy reading it when you're home alone. I went into the kitchen one morning when I was like 11 and looked out the window to the fence to see a squirrel with a mini Hershey's bar in hand with just enough wrapper peeled down you could read Hershey still and munching on it like a human. I thought it was hilarious at the time, but also knew that's probably going to kill you. I never found out what happened to that squirrel. I once saw 2 squirrels standing on the edge of a dumpster, each eating a pizza roll. When I walked by they turned and looked at me, and I just cracked up because they were holding them with 2 hands like giant burritos. Me at the age of about 5 or 6, I'm play fighting with my dad, and at some point I end up sitting on his face and he's lying on his back. My mom made a joke like haha and now fart, and I thought it was funny and farted. They sent me to my room then. I didn't get sarcasm. I'm now too embarrassed to ask if I dreamed it or not. We used to live in an old farmhouse with a very steep long staircase right next to my room. When I was about 2 or 3 I fell down the stairs. I still remember it because it felt like I was falling in slow motion. I lost my balance, started to fall and tried to grip part of the banister going down again and again but couldn't hold on to it. Through the banister I could see my mom's shocked face in the dining room and her jumping up, all still slowed down. When I reached the bottom I slammed against the front door and just kinda lay there and saw my mom running down the stairs towards me. Time sped up again. I know it happened but I still remember falling so clearly it seems weird. My mom told me I kept saying I couldn't hold on in between crying. When I was around 5 or 6 years old I remember walking outside on a cloudy day and seeing it raining at my neighbor's house across the street but not raining at mine. That's the first time it ever occurred to me it doesn't rain everywhere when it rains at my house. When I was maybe 5 or 6 I remember flipping a coin off my thumb and it rotating for longer than physically possible. Obviously it couldn't have happened, but I remember it clearly. On a road trip with my family late at night I saw a tiny blue door carved in a hill. I remember it so vividly, but it was so long ago at this point I DK if it's real or a dream. I had a dream where I punched my friend because he wouldn't stop talking about trains. I asked my friend years later if it was true and she said I actually did it. But I remember waking up from it. I have no idea what to believe. In the UK we used to have a TV show called TV Live in the morning on Saturdays presented by Ant and Dec and Cat Dealey. Still a smoking hottie by the way. One day the 1st of April happened to be a Saturday. Dec goes really woozy while presenting and faints. Everyone is like oh god, cut to adverts, which it does. It then comes back and he is fine and like April Fools. Kinda stupid but I cannot find footage of it and everyone I talk to doesn't remember. I am maybe 4 years old. I follow my sister up the outside stairs of our apartment building to where a man is sitting on the top step. He is cleaning a handgun and I don't know him, so I am afraid. My sister chatters away about the gun. How does it work? What's that part for? Can I hold it? I'm frozen. I want to not be here, but I don't know what to do. I have to wait for my sister. She's the oldest. She should know. The man gets up, puts the gun inside his jacket, and looks at me. That's all I remember. I have no idea if this happened or if it was a dream, but the memory doesn't feel like a dream. My sister doesn't remember it at all, so it must have been a dream, right? There are plenty of things you don't remember, just like there are plenty of things she doesn't remember. Just because someone else doesn't remember doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it also doesn't mean it did. My mom waited outside a bathroom for me at JCPenney's one time while I went in. I was 4 or 5 years old. There was a guy in there while I was at the urinal but nothing seemed unusual about the memory of it other than it being unusual that I would remember something so mundane. That is until I was 34 and the rest of the memory slowly filtered back. I started remembering that the guy had touched my dong while I stood at the urinal. Even writing this now I wouldn't bet my soul that it happened because surely it would be more clear than that. But then again, why would I start remembering that at all? Frick, I don't know. When me and my friend were in elementary school, we always went down to the park behind his house and would catch bugs, spiders, whatever and put them in little plastic containers. But I have a vivid memory of one day making a little habitat for a non-poisonous spider in a shoebox to bring to show and tell, and then finding out the spider had laid eggs, and I vividly remember spilling spiders all over my mom's car. It was so vivid and exaggerated, I can remember spiders like flowing out of the box, that I, for years, was sure that it was a dream I had, until I brought it up to my mom one day, and she explained how very real it was. I remember playing badminton in the house with my sister. At one shot, I had to back up quite a bit to get it. I tripped and fell backwards and hit my head. I dreamt of myself riding a bicycle and then when I came to, my legs were in the air like I was riding a bicycle. My sister says that never happened. I remember talking to one of my friends in primary school who mentioned he'd been abducted by aliens. I've asked him a few years ago and he doesn't remember having that happen at all, or mentioning it to me. Kids always make up the weirdest stories. My friend used to tell me the weirdest stories and I believed them all, and when I asked her about them a few years later she said that they were all made up. I was very disappointed. This is the goodest fly boy. He will bring you 10 years of happiness in exchange for a like on this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.